Simplify the following expression. The quantity 2x squared plus 3 times the quantity 2x minus 1. To simplify, we need to FOIL. The F in FOIL stands for first. So we're going to take the first term in our first binomial and multiply it times the first term in our second binomial. First and first. 2x squared times 2x. 2 times 2 is 4. X squared times x is x cubed. Next we do O, which stands for outer. So those are the two terms on the outside, which would be 2x squared and negative 1. So 2x squared times a negative 1 is negative 2x squared. Then our inner terms are the two terms on the inside, 3 times 2x, which is a positive 6x. And then finally, our last terms. So the last term in the first set of parentheses and the last term in the second set of parentheses. 3 times negative 1, which is negative 3. Then we'd want to look and see if we had any like terms to combine, and we don't. We have a cubic x term, a squared x term, an x term, and then just a constant. So that's our answer, which matches answer choice A. Simplify the following expression. The square root of 3 times the quantity 5 square roots of 3 minus the square root of 12 plus the square root of 10. Since there is no operator between the square root of 3 and the parentheses, like there's no addition sign or subtraction sign or division sign, it's understood to be multiplication. So I'm multiplying the square root of 3 times all of these terms inside my parentheses, which means we're going to use the distributive property. So I'll start by multiplying the square root of 3 times 5 square roots of 3. So that's 5 times, and then the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 9, which is 3. So that's 5 times 3. The square root of 3 times the negative square root of 12 is the negative square root of, and you just multiply your numbers under the square root. So 3 times 12 is 36. And then the square root of 3 times the square root of 10. So again, we're just multiplying our numbers under the radical. 3 times 10 is 30, so the square root of 30. But we're not finished yet because we have some simplifying that we can do. 5 times 3 is 15 minus the square root of 36 is 6 because 6 times 6 is 36 plus, now 30. You want to break down that number and see if there is any part of it that we can take the square root of. So to break it down, you can just do a factor tree. 30 is 3 times 10, 3 is prime, and 10 is 2 times 5, and those are both prime. So I have no pairs of numbers and no perfect square factors, so I can't take the square root of any part of 30, so it has to be left as just the square root of 30. And finally, we can subtract 15 minus 6, since those are like terms, and we get 9. So 9 plus the square root of 30. So our answer is A. If 2x equals 5x minus 30, what is the value of x? The first thing we want to do to solve for x is to get all of our x terms on the same side of the equal sign. We have 2x on the left side of the equal sign, and we have 5x on the right side of the equal sign. We have two options here. We can either subtract 2x from both sides, and that way we would get rid of 2x on the left side, or we can subtract 5x from both sides and get rid of 5x on the right side. I'm going to subtract 5x from both sides. This is called the subtraction property of equality. Because I have the left side equal to the right side, then I could subtract the same thing from both sides, and they'll still be equal. 2x minus 5x is negative 3x. We bring down our equal sign. 5x minus 5x is 0 because those are additive inverses, so we've canceled that out. And what we have left on the right side is negative 30. Now we have negative 3 times x is equal to negative 30. So to solve for x, we need to do the opposite of multiplying by a negative 3, which is dividing both sides by a negative 3. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 is 1. And 1 times x is just x. So we have x equals negative 30 divided by negative 3. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. And 30 divided by 3 is 10. So x equals 10, which is answer choice A. Which of the following lines is parallel to the line y equals 3x minus 12? This equation is in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, where the m is the slope of the line. The slope of our line is 3, and b is the y-intercept of the line, and our y-intercept is negative 12. Now, for lines to be parallel, they must have the same slope, but different y-intercepts. So we're looking for a line that has a slope of 3, but does not have a y-intercept of negative 12. So maybe we just put a slash that equal sign. We do not want a y-intercept that equals negative 12. Let's look at b first, because b is in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. As you can see, our m, negative 1/3, is not the same as our m from our original line. And again, m stands for slope, and our slopes have to be equal for our lines to be parallel. Since this slope is negative 1/3, it is not parallel to our line. So we've already eliminated one answer choice. Now let's look at C. This equation is not in slope-intercept form. It's in standard form, which is, well, close to standard form. It's by minus ax equals c. And since it's not in slope-intercept form, we do not know the slope of this line. But we can find the slope of this line by transforming it. The first thing we need to do is add 36x to both sides. So we bring down our 12y. Our negative 36x and our positive 36x cancels. We bring down our equals. These are not like terms, so we can't combine them. We just write them down. So positive 36x minus 144. Finally, we need to divide by 12 to solve for y. 12 divided by 12 is 1, times y is y, equals 36x divided by 12 is 3x, and negative 144 divided by 12 is negative 12. Now this looks familiar. It's in fact the exact same equation as our original line. Great, then it's parallel, right? No, they're the same line, so they can't be parallel to each other because parallel lines never intersect. But these lines are going to intersect each other an infinite number of times because they're the same line. They have the same slope and the same y-intercept. So this is also not our line that's parallel to our original line. Now let's look at D. Again, it's not in slope-intercept form. So we have to solve for y in order to find out what our slope and y-intercept is. So we want to subtract 3x from both sides and subtract 12 from both sides. So we have y, positive 3x, negative 3x cancels, positive 12, negative 12 cancels, equals negative 3x minus 12. So first we look at our slopes. The slope of this line is negative 3, which is not the same as the slope of our line, which means they're not parallel. So it doesn't even matter what our y-intercept is. We know D is not our answer. Well, we're down to our last choice, so hopefully A is going to be parallel. Again, it's not in slope-intercept form, so we have to transform. We need to solve for y by first adding 9x to both sides. So we have 3y, negative 9x plus 9x cancels, equals, these are not like terms, so we can't add them together. We just write them down, 9x minus 12. And finally, to solve for y, we need to divide everything by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 1 times y is y, equals 9x divided by 3 is 3x, and negative 12 divided by 3 is negative 4. So now we found a line that has the same slope as our line, but a different y-intercept. This one's negative 4 instead of negative 12. So we found our parallel line. If the volume of a cube is 8 cubic centimeters, what is the length of the cube? Let's start with what we know. The volume is 8 cubic centimeters. The formula for volume of a cube is side cubed. And we know what the volume is, so substitute 8 centimeters cubed for volume. So that equals the side cubed, or the length cubed. Since it's a cube, all of the dimensions are the same. So if they ask for length, we can find that. It's the same as the width and the height, which is why we just use an S instead of length times width times height. But how do we solve? So we have side cubed. If we want to solve for side, then we need to do the opposite of cubing, which is to cube root. So take the cube root of both sides. When you're taking the cube root, really what you're doing is you're finding what number times itself 3 times would give you 8. And that number would be 2. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, or 2 cubed is 8. So the cube root of 8 is 2. And the cube root of centimeters cubed is simply centimeters. And that equals the cube root of side cubed, which is side. Or again, length or width or height, all the dimensions are the same. So what is the length? Answer B, 2 centimeters. Simplify the following expression. The quantity 2x minus 20 times the quantity 5x plus 10. To multiply these two binomials, we can use a method called FOIL. And FOIL stands for first. O stands for outer. I stands for inner. And L stands for last. So the F, first, means to multiply the first term in the first binomial times the first term in the second binomial. First times first. 2x times 5x. 2 times 5 is 10. And x times x is x squared. So it's 10x squared. The O again stands for outer. So that means to multiply the two outside terms. So 2x and 10 are the two terms on the outside, the outer terms. So 2x times 10, 2 times 10 is 20, 2x times 10 is 20x. I stands for inner. That means to multiply the two terms on the inside. So that would be this negative 20 times 5x. Negative 20 times 5x. A negative times a positive is a negative. 20 times 5x is 100x. Then finally, we multiply the last terms together. So that means the last term in the first set of parentheses or in the first binomial times the last term in the second binomial. Last times last. So that's negative 20 times 10, which is negative 200. A negative times a positive is a negative. We're almost done. The last thing we need to do is combine these like terms right here. 20x and negative 100x. So it's really 20x minus 100x. Bring down the 10x squared first. And 20x minus 100x would be negative 80x. Then bring down the negative 200. So looking at our answer choices, looks like answer A would be the correct answer. Simplify the following expression. 64x to the fourth plus 8x cubed minus 4x squared plus 16x, all divided by 8x. So really what we have here is four separate fractions. I'm going to break this up. 64x to the fourth divided by 8x plus 8x cubed divided by 8x minus 4x squared divided by 8x plus 16x divided by 8x. Every single term is divided by 8x. So now we can take each one of these individually and divide by 8x. 64 divided by 8 is 8. And x to the fourth divided by x, well, let's see what that looks like. X to the fourth divided by x is x times x times x times x, x times itself 4 times, x to the fourth, divided by x. X divided by x is 1, so those cancel. And what you're left with is x cubed. So x to the fourth divided by x is x cubed. Plus 8 divided by 8 is 1 times, and then we do the same thing with x cubed divided by x. So x cubed divided by x would be x times x times x divided by x. X divided by x is 1, so you're left with x times x, x squared. Minus 4 divided by 8. 4 can't really be divided by 8, but we can simplify 4/8 as 1/2. And then x squared divided by x. You may have noticed from these two examples before that when we divide by x, what we're doing, or really when we divide at all, what we're doing is subtracting the exponents. So x to the 4th minus x to the 1st, or x to the 4 minus 1, x cubed. So here we have x to the 3 minus 1, x squared. So now we have x squared minus 1, or just x, plus 16 divided by 8 is 2, and x divided by x is 1. So our answer is 8x cubed plus x squared minus 1/2 x plus 2, which is answer B. In a coordinate plane, what is the distance between point A, 4, 9, and B, 15, 18? Well, there's a very straightforward way to answer this question. If we want to find the distance between 2 points in a coordinate plane, then we need to use the distance formula. The distance formula is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. And the x2, y2, x1, y1, those are just the coordinates of your ordered pairs. For instance, this is my first ordered pair. So this will be my x1, y1. This is my second ordered pair. So this is my x2, y2. Now all we need to do is substitute. So distance equals the square root of x2 is 15 minus x1 is 4 squared plus y2 is 18 minus y1 is 9 squared. And now we need to follow our order of operations, which means grouping symbols first. So distance equals the square root of 15 minus 4 is 11 squared plus 18 minus 9 is 9 squared. Next, our order of operations tells us to take care of our exponents. So the distance equals the square root of 11 squared is 11 times 11, which is 121, plus 9 squared is 9 times 9, or 81. Then we need to add. So the distance equals the square root of 121 plus 81, which is 202. And 202 is not a perfect square, so if I take the square root of it, I'm going to get an irrational number, a decimal that just keeps on going. So our answer is simply the square root of 202. In the following equation, solve for x by factoring. 2x squared minus 7x equals x squared minus 12. In order to factor, we need to get all of our terms on the same side. So that means subtracting an x squared from both sides so that we have x squared now minus 7x, and then adding 12 to both sides. So now this is plus 12 equals 0. Now we're ready to factor. So I have a binomial and a binomial equals 0. I know my first two terms are going to be, or my first term in each binomial, because x times x gives me x squared. To find these second numbers in each binomial, these numbers must be factors of 12 that add to be negative 7. Let's start by looking at the factors of 12. 1 and 12 are factors of 12. 2 and 6 are factors of 12. And also 3 and 4 are factors of 12. Now again, these numbers have to add to give us a negative 7, while also multiplying to give us a positive 12. The only way these numbers can do both those things is if they're both negative. Because a negative times a negative will give us the positive 12, but when we add the two negatives together, we'll get our negative 7. So negative 1 and negative 12, that's negative 13, not negative 7. Doesn't work. Negative 2 and negative 6 is negative 8, not negative 7. Doesn't work. But negative 3 and negative 4 does give me negative 7. So I found my numbers, negative 3 and negative 4. And then if you just FOIL, you can check your answer to see if it's correct. So we do first times first, x times x, x squared. Outer, x times negative 4 is negative 4x. Then the inner, negative 3 times x, negative 3x. So you have negative 4x plus negative 3x, which is the middle term, negative 7x. And then finally the last, negative 3 times negative 4, which is a positive 12. So now we've checked and we know that we factored correctly. But we still haven't solved for x. Here we have two expressions that we're multiplying together, and that gives us 0. The only way you can multiply two numbers together and get 0 is if one of them is 0. So that means that either x minus 3 must be 0 or x minus 4 must be 0. And now we just solve each equation. So add 3 and 3. Those cancel because they're additive inverses, and x equals 3. Or add 4 and add 4, and those cancel because they're additive inverses, and x equals 4. So that means x equals 3 and 4, which is answer B. Simplify the following expression. The quantity 2x to the 4th cubed plus 2 times the quantity y to the 5th raised to the 5th power. We have to use our rules of exponents here, and our rules tell us that whatever is inside the parentheses must be raised to the exponent outside that parentheses. So we have 2 cubed times x to the 4th cubed. So when we raise an exponent to an exponent, we multiply those exponents together. Plus 2, and then again we have y to the 5th raised to the 5th. So another exponent raised to an exponent. And when you have an exponent raised to an exponent, those must be multiplied together. So y to the 5 times 5. And now we can simplify this. 2 cubed means 2 times itself 3 times, not 2 times 3. So it's 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. So 2 cubed is 8 times x to the 4 times 3 is 12 plus 2 times y to the 5 times 5 is the 25th power, which is answer choice D. Solve for y using the following system of equations. 2x minus 6y equals 12. Negative 6x plus 4y equals 42. There are several ways to solve a system of equations. What you need to keep in mind is that what you're doing is finding where these two lines intersect on a graph. So you can graph, that's one way to solve a system, is to graph both the lines and see where they intersect. And then in this case, just give the y coordinate. But you can also use substitution or elimination. And it's really your choice which one seems the best for the situation. In this situation, elimination seems to be the easiest choice. Because if I multiply this top equation by 3, I'll have a positive 6x term and a negative 6x term that will eliminate, thus allowing me to solve for y. So I'm going to multiply this entire top equation by 3. 3 times 2x is 6x. 3 times negative 6y is negative 18y. And 3 times 12 is 36. Now I'm just going to add these two equations together. Negative 6x and 6x is 0. They cancel. 14y and negative 18y is negative 4y. Bring down the equals. 42 plus 36 is 78. Then to solve for y, I need to divide both sides by negative 4. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is 1 times y is y equals a positive divided by a negative is a negative. And then I just need to go off to the side and divide 78 by 4. 4 goes into 7 one time. 4 times 1 is 4. You subtracting it, 3. Bring down the 8. 4 goes into 38 9 times. 4 times 9 is 36. Subtract and you get 2. Add a decimal, and a 0. Bring it down. And 4 goes into 20 5 times. 4 times 5 is 20. Subtract and you get a remainder of 0. So it's negative 19 and 5/10, which is answer A. Simplify the following expression. 16m to the 16th, y to the 4th, z to the 6th, divided by 8m to the 8th, y squared, z cubed, all raised to the 4th power. First, we want to simplify before we raise to the 4th power. So we're going to start with dividing 16 by 8, which is 2. Then m to the 16th divided by m to the 8th is m to the 16 minus 8. Since when you divide like bases, you subtract the exponents. Y to the 4th divided by y squared is y to the 4 minus 2. And z to the 6th divided by z cubed is z to the 6 minus 3. Now we need to simplify our exponents. So we have 2m to the 16 minus 8, 8. Y to the 4 minus 2, 2. And z to the 6 minus 3, 3. We have to be very careful to not forget that all of this is supposed to be raised to the 4th power. So we're not done yet. Now we need to raise everything inside our parentheses to the 4th power. So we'll start with 2 to the 4th. Then we have m to the 8th raised to the 4th. We're raising a power to a power, so we must multiply our exponents. So m to the 8 times 4 is 32. Y to the 2 times 4 is 8. And z to the 3 times 4 is 12. Finally, we need to simplify 2 to the 4th. 2 to the 4th means to multiply 2 times itself 4 times. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. So 2 times itself 4 times is 16. M to the 32nd, Y to the 8th, Z to the 12th. So our answer is answer choice D. Evaluate the following expression if x equals 3. X to the 5th times x squared plus y to the 0 power equals. So first we need to substitute 3 for x. So we have 3 to the 5th times 3 squared plus anything raised to the 0 power, x, y, 10, 15, anything raised to the 0 power is 1. So that's plus 1. 3 to the 5th times 3 squared is really 3 to the 7th power plus 1. And 3 to the 7th power is 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, times 3 times 3. 3 to the 5th times 3 squared plus 1. Okay, so we have a lot of 3's to multiply. 3 times 3 is 9 times 3 times 3 is 9 times 3 times 3 is 9 times 3 plus 1. 9 times 9 is 81 times, and then 9 times 3 is 27 plus 1. Okay, so now we need to multiply 81 times 27. 27 times 81, 1 times 7, 7, 1 times 2, 2, 0 placeholder. 8 times 7 is 56, so write the 6, carry the 5. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 5 is 21. So that's 7, we're adding these together, 8, 1, 2. So 2,187 plus 1, which is 2,188. So that's our answer. Answer D. If W equals 7, calculate the value of the following expression. 8W squared minus 12W plus the quantity of 4W minus 5 plus 6. In order to simplify, the first thing we need to do is substitute 7 for W. So we start by bringing down the 8. We're going to replace W with 7, so it's 8 times 7 squared minus 12. Again, replace W with 7, so times 7 plus, bring down the parentheses, 4 times W, or times 7, minus 5, plus 6. In order to simplify this, we must follow the order of operations, or PEMDAS. We start with parentheses, then exponents, then we multiply and divide from left to right, and finally we add and subtract from left to right. So that means we need to start with anything inside parentheses. So here we have a couple of different operations inside our parentheses. We have multiplication and subtraction. Well, again, if we consult PEMDAS, we can see that we're supposed to always multiply and divide before we add and subtract. So that means we're starting with 4 times 7. So you'll just copy everything else. The 8 times 7 squared minus 12 times 7 plus, bring down the parentheses. Finally, we get to 4 times 7, 28, minus 5, and bring down the plus 6. So we haven't finished simplifying what's in our parentheses, and that's what we'll do now. 28 minus 5. So bring down the 8 times 7 squared minus 12 times 7 plus 28 minus 5 is 23 plus 6. Now if we go back to PEMDAS, after parentheses, which we have no more of, we then simplify any exponents. And we do have exponents right here, 7 squared. So that's what we'll do next. 8 times 7 squared means 7 times 7, and that's 49. Minus 12 times 7 plus 23 plus 6. Okay, after exponents is our multiplication and division from left to right. So first we see 8 times 49. We can just go off to the side and multiply that. 49 times 8. 8 times 9 is 72, so write the 2 and carry the 7. 8 times 4 is 32. 32 plus 7 is 392. So we have 392 minus 12 times 7 plus 23 plus 6. We need to continue multiplying and dividing from left to right. So next I see 12 times 7. So we'll multiply that. 12 times 7. 7 times 2 is 14. Write the 4, carry the 1. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 1 is 8. So that's 84. Bring down the 392 minus 84 plus 23 plus 6. So all we have left now is our addition and subtraction from left to right. So we start with 392 minus 84. I'll do that over here. So we have to borrow from the 9, it becomes an 8. And we have 12 here. 12 minus 4 is 8. 8 minus 8 is 0, and we bring down the 3. So we have 308 plus 23 plus 6. So that means we need to add 23 to our 308. That's the next thing we're going to do. 8 plus 3 is 11. Carry the 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. And bring your 3 down. So we have 331 plus 6. And that's the last thing we're going to do is add 6 to 331. So we get 7, 3, 3. Our final answer is 337, which is answer choice C. A rectangular prism measures 12 centimeters by 3 centimeters by 9 centimeters. What is its volume? The formula for volume for a rectangular prism is volume equals length times width times height. And we were given those dimensions: length, width, and height. And really it doesn't matter which one is the length, which one's the width, and which one's the height, since we're just going to multiply those three numbers together anyway. So the volume is 12 centimeters times 3 centimeters times 9 centimeters. And it's up to you which two you choose to multiply together first. You could start with 12 times 3. 3 times 2 is 6. And 3 times 1 is 3. So 12 centimeters times 3 centimeters is 36 centimeters squared times 9 centimeters. So then you could take 36 times 9. 9 times 6 is 54. 9 times 3 is 27. Plus 5 is 32. So 36 centimeters squared times 9 centimeters is 324 centimeters cubed. which is answer choice C. If 2x plus 5x equals 3x plus x plus 30, what is the value of x? So first I'm going to combine like terms on both sides of the equal sign. On the left side, I can combine 2x plus 5x to give me 7x. Bring down this equal sign, and on the right side, we can combine 3x plus x. So 3x plus another x gives us 4x. And then bring down the plus 30. Next, we need to get all of our x terms on the same side of the equal sign. We'll do this by subtracting 4x from both sides. 7x minus 4x is 3x. Bring down the equals. 4x minus 4x cancels, they're additive inverses, and we bring down the positive 30. Finally, we need to divide both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 1 times x is simply x. So x equals 30 divided by 3, which is 10. And that's answer choice D. If y equals 2, what is the value of the following expression? The quantity y to the 9th divided by y cubed times 2. The first thing we need to do is substitute 2 for y in our expression. So it becomes 2 to the 9th divided by 2 cubed, and that quantity times 2. And what I want to do is rewrite it. I prefer my fractions to be stacked, so I'm going to rewrite this as 2 to the 9th divided by 2 cubed times 2. When we're dividing and we have our bases the same, so in this case 2 is our base and it's the same, we simply subtract our exponents. 9 minus 3 is 6, so that's 2 to the 6th times 2. 2 to the 6th is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times itself 6 times, and then times 2. So all we have to do is multiply all these 2's. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 2 is 4. And then times 2. 4 times 4 is 16 times, and 4 times 2 is 8. So now I just need to multiply 16 times 8. 8 times 6 is 48. Carry the 4. 8 times 1 is 8. Plus 4 is 12. So it's 128. A line passes through points A, negative 318, and B, 5, 2. What is the slope of the line? Well, there are a couple of different ways we can find slope. One would be to graph these 2 points on a coordinate plane and then count between the points the rise and the run. Because that's all that slope is, really. Slope is the change in your y values divided by the change in your x values. Or y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So this first point, this would be our first x and our first y. And then our second point here, b, would be our second x and our second y. And now that we've labeled, we just need to substitute. y2 is 2 minus y1 is 18 divided by x2 is 5 minus x1 is negative 3. And then we simplify. 2 minus 18 is negative 16 divided by 5 minus a negative 8. We can add the opposite, so that's just 8. And we can simplify that. Negative 16 divided by 8 is negative 2. So our slope is negative 2. If a circle has a diameter of 12 centimeters, what is its area? The formula for area of a circle is pi times radius squared. We need to know what the radius of our circle is. We're given diameter, which is 12 centimeters. The diameter is twice the radius, or the radius is half of the diameter. So half of 12 centimeters would be 6 centimeters. So that means our radius is 6 centimeters. So we take our radius and substitute it into our formula. So area is pi times 6 centimeters squared. So the area is 6 squared, 36, pi centimeters squared. But if we look at our answers, none of our answers have pi in them. So that means that these answers are multiplied times pi. If you have a calculator, then you can just multiply 36 times pi in the calculator. But if you don't have a calculator, then pi is approximately 3 14/100. So take 3 14/100 and multiply that times 36. 6 times 4 is 24. Write the 4, carry the 2. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 2 is 8. 6 times 3 is 18. Get rid of that. Put a 0 placeholder to move on to the 3. 3 times 4 is 12. Write the 2 and carry the 1. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. And 3 times 3 is 9. Now add these up. 4 plus 0 is 4. 8 plus 2 is 10. Write the 0, carry the 1. 8, 9 plus 4 is 13. Write the 3, carry the 1. 9, 10, 11. Now, we have two numbers behind the decimal place in our numbers we multiplied together, so that means that our product must also have two numbers behind the decimal place. So our answer would be 113 centimeters squared, which is answer choice B. X squared plus x equals 42. What is the value of x? We need to find what numbers or number will make this equation true. And there are a couple of different options we have, really. But I'm going to show you how to solve for x by factoring. If I want to factor, then the first thing I need to do is move this 42 to the other side. So subtract 42 from both sides of the equation. So I have x squared plus x minus 42 equals 42 minus 42 is 0. Now I'm ready to factor this trinomial. So I start with my parentheses for my two binomials. And I know that the first term of each parentheses is going to be an x, because x times x is x squared. And then to find my second terms, I need to find two numbers that multiply to give me negative 42 and add to give me a positive 1. because 1 is the coefficient of x. And the two numbers that would multiply to give me a negative 42 and add to give me a positive 1 are 7 and negative 6. 7 times negative 6 is negative 42, and 7 plus negative 6 is a positive 1. You can always check your factoring by foiling. X times x is x squared. X times negative 6 is negative 6x. Plus 7x is x, and 7 times negative 6 is negative 42. What I have now is that some number, and I don't know what it is because I don't know what x is yet, but some number times another number is 0. And the only way to multiply two numbers together and get 0 is if one of your numbers is 0. Which means either x plus 7 has to be 0 or x minus 6 has to be 0. And then we just solve for x in each equation. So to solve for x on this one, we need to subtract 7 from both sides. Bring down the x. Plus 7 minus 7 is 0. Bring down your equals. 0 minus 7 is negative 7. Or to solve for x in our second equation, we need to add 6 to both sides. Negative 6 plus 6 is 0, so x equals 0 plus 6 is 6, which means x is negative 7 or it is 6, and that's answer C. What is the value of 6 factorial? What 6 factorial means is 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And so since we're just multiplying a series of numbers, you can multiply them in any order you want. So you can take any two numbers and multiply those together first and then continue multiplying. But I'll just multiply them in order. So we have 6 times 5, which is 30, times 4, times 3, times 2, times 1. Then we can multiply 30 times 4. We have 30, 60, 90, 120. So 30 times 4 is 120, times 3, times 2, times 1. Then 120 times 3, 120 times 3. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 1 is 3. So 360 times 2 times 1. And 360 times 2. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 6 is 12. Carry the 1. 2 times 3 is 6. Plus 1 is 7. So 720 times 1, and 720 times 1 is just 720. So 6 factorial is equal to 720. Answer C. What is the midpoint of points A, negative 28, and B, 5, 3? To find the midpoint, we can use the midpoint formula, which is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, then y1 plus y2 divided by 2. And if you look closely, you'll notice what you're doing is you're adding your endpoint x coordinates together and dividing by 2. That's an average, or the middle of those two numbers. So it makes sense that if you're trying to find the midpoint, that you would find the middle of your x coordinates and then also the middle of your y coordinates. And then you'll end up with a midpoint. So now I'm going to label my ordered pairs x1, y1, and x2, y2. So that now I can substitute. So my midpoint is x1 is negative 20, and x2 is 5. So negative 20 plus 5 divided by 2. And then I'll add my y's and divide by 2. So 8 plus 3 divided by 2. And now we just need to simplify. Negative 20 plus 5 is negative 15 divided by 2. And 8 plus 3 is 11 divided by 2. Negative 15 divided by 2, that's a negative divided by a positive. That's a negative. And it's negative 7.5. And then 11 divided by 2 is positive 5.5. So that is answer choice D. On a 6-sided die, each side has a number between 1 and 6. What is the probability of throwing a 3 or a 4? This die has 6 sides, so that means our total is 6, which is the denominator of our fraction for finding our probability. We want to know what the probability of throwing a 3 or, and that is a key word, 3 or a 4. So if it lands on either one of those, we're good. So that's 2 different numbers that we could land on out of our 6 different numbers. And then of course we can simplify our fraction by dividing the numerator and the denominator both by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 6 divided by 2 is 3, so it's 1 in 3. Or, written like this, a 1 in 3 chance. Expand the following expression. The quantity 2x minus 5 times the quantity x plus 7. And we know it's multiplication because there is no other operator symbol between these 2 sets of parentheses. There's no addition sign or subtraction or division, which means it's automatically and it's simply understood that we're multiplying these 2 binomials together. And a binomial just means 2 terms. So I'm going to use FOIL to help us multiply these binomials. And FOIL is just kind of an easier way to remember what to do when you're multiplying these binomials. The F stands for first, O outer, I inner, and L last. So we start with F first. And that F tells you to multiply the first terms in each set of parentheses. So that's 2x times x. Those are the first terms in each set of parentheses. 2x times x is 2x squared. The O stands for outer or outside. So now we're going to multiply the 2 outside terms. And that's 2x and positive 7. Those are on the outside. 2x times 7 is 14x. So plus 14x. I stands for inner or inside. Negative 5 and x are the 2 inside terms. Negative 5 times x is negative 5x. Finally, L, last. We now multiply the last terms in each set of parentheses together. Negative 5 and 7 are the last terms in each set of parentheses. A negative 5 times a positive 7 is a negative 35. But we aren't finished yet because we have like terms that we can combine, and should. So we're going to bring down the 2x squared, and then combine positive 14x and negative 5x. 14x minus 5x is 9x, so plus 9x minus 35. And that gives you answer choice A. (9x minus 3y plus 8xy minus 3). If x equals 10 and y equals negative 2, what is the value of this expression? First, we need to substitute. 9 times x, and we're replacing x with 10. So 9 times 10 minus 3 times y, and we're replacing y with negative 2. Plus 8 times x times y, so times 10 times negative 2. Minus 3. Now, we need to follow our order of operations. First would be grouping symbols, but in this case there aren't any. Next would be exponents, and again we don't have any. So after that is multiplication and division, working from left to right. Starting at the left, we have 9 times 10, which is 90. Minus 3 times negative 2 plus 8 times 10 times negative 2 minus 3. Our next set of multiplication would be right here. So I'm going to bring down my 90 minus 3 times negative 2 is negative 6 plus 8 times 10 times negative 2 minus 3. Our next set of multiplication would be 8 times 10. So we have 90 minus a negative 6 plus 8 times 10 is 80 times negative 2 minus 3. Then we need to multiply 80 times negative 2. So we bring down our 90 minus negative 6 plus 80 times negative 2. A positive times a negative is a negative, so negative 160 minus 3. Now that we've taken care of all the multiplication, we're now going to work with addition and subtraction, again from left to right. So starting on the left, we're going to start with 90 minus a negative 6. Minus a negative, you can think of this like you're taking away a negative, which is the same as adding a positive, or you can add the inverse. So we have 90 plus 6, 96, plus negative 160 minus 3. Again, we've got to continue working from left to right. So next we have 96 plus negative 160. These two numbers have different signs. 96 is positive, while 160 is negative. Since they have different signs, we need to subtract them. So I'll do that off to the side. 160 minus 96. So to borrow from the 6, it becomes a 5. 10 minus 6 is 4. Now borrow from the 1, it becomes a 0. So I have 15 minus 9 is 6. So 160 minus 96 is 64. And it's going to be a negative 64 because 160, or negative 160, has a larger absolute value than 96 does. So negative 64 minus 3. And the last thing we do is subtract those numbers. So if you think about where you are in the number line, you're at way over here on the left at negative 64. And then you subtract 3, so you're moving more to the left. Your number's getting even smaller. So it's negative 67. Another way to think about it is you have 64 negatives and 3 negatives, that's a total of 67 negatives. And finally, even another way to think about it is you can change it to adding the inverse. So you have negative 64 plus negative 3. Either way, you're going to get negative 67. And that's answer A.